keep hearing Memphis pop up as a suggestion for this league, for that league. No.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, and thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. There's a new quarterback in the room at Michigan. I don't quite know what's going on there, nor do I know why things are not happening at a better rate in Blacksburg, Virginia. We'll check in on the Hokies on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So I've been asked a couple questions recently about Memphis. And the most recent serious idea, I don't think it was ever really a proposal, but idea that got tossed out there was, what about Memphis to the Pac-12 as a football-only member? What if they could do that? Could be an option. And you know what? I see where your head is at. The answer to that is no, for a couple of reasons. First of all, the American is not the Mountain West. In the new group of 6, 5, numbers are hard. In the new group of 5 or 6 landscape of college football specifically, the American is as well positioned as the Pac-12, or at least it's in 90% of the same spot. I give the edge to the Pac-12. Maybe I'm biased because I'm a Pac-12 guy, but when you have Oregon State and Washington State in there, that to me is a significant advantage because they've showcased conference championship potential in a Power 5 conference. Nobody else has done that, of course, because, well, they aren't in a Power 5 conference. But Memphis playing in the American has everything that they need. Their television deal currently is better than what the new Mountain West is going to provide. It's probably even in a similar vein of what they would get if they went to the Pac-12 as a football-only member. I don't think there's a huge financial incentive, even if there were, by the way. Memphis being so far out of the way makes them, I think, less likely to move to a conference that isn't close to their footprint, because your increase in travel costs nets out any financial gain that you have. So if that's the case, which I think it would be, it could, I haven't actually done the hardcore calculation, but the increased travel costs would be significant. So even if the Pac-12 could offer them more money than what they get in the American, which I don't know that they can, since we don't actually have the details of the Pac-12 deal just yet, as I'm recording this show. If Memphis were to consider making that move, it would have to be, well, we'd be taking such a leap in competition that we'd be gaining relevance, we'd play in bigger games, we'd have better access to the playoff, but they don't have that problem right now. The Pac-12 came and asked for them and Tulane and I think one or two others, way back after they first made the move into the Mountain West and got 4 schools before they added Utah State. They tried to go and take the best out of the American. I thought it was a solid pitch. I think that conference, best of the Mountain West, take out Utah State with Oregon State, Washington State, and then insert like a Memphis, Tulane, UTSA sort of combination. Holy smokes. That's a league. That's a league that is not Power 4, but is somehow not quite feeling like a group of 5 conference. However, that league, of course, never materialized. But Memphis doesn't have any concern about whether they can get into the playoff, about whether they can play quality games. Remember, Memphis, okay, this is, let me qualify this at some level. They played Florida State, and they beat them pretty soundly. They were just a better football team. Now, Florida State stunk. My point remains, though, Memphis in its current conference has the ability to get quality Power 4 opponents. They're in a region where they wouldn't have to travel super far to find Big 12 or ACC schools, so they could schedule some home and homes. Shouldn't be a problem. Shouldn't, I think. But then they go about their conference play, and you look at their schedule every year and go, yeah, they've got some good opponents in there. Now, is the American weaker without SMU? Sure, no doubt about it. But when you're in a league that still has Tulane, that still has UTSA, you're on pretty solid footing. And frankly, Memphis arguably is kind of the flagship football school or just athletic school in general for the American Conference, or at the very least, they are one of the top brands in there. But I think Tulane is where people would jump immediately. That also has been known to get Power 4 teams on their schedule. They've played Kansas State recently. Memphis played Florida State. You've got to be able to pick up those games. You've got to be able to go out and win those games to kind of justify what happens in your conference slate. Like Boise State last year went to Oregon, lost by 3, and everyone looks at them differently when they go undefeated in Mountain West play because, well, hey, it's not just that they're beating up on that competition. Look at what they did against a premier opponent. So I don't think Memphis has any of those sorts of concerns. I don't think them going into the Pac-12 would make any sort of sense. I understand the discussion. It'd be a great move for the Pac-12 to strengthen their brand as a football conference, because I think basketball-wise, that with Gonzaga in there, the Pac-12 arguably has a stronger foothold in terms of pedigree in basketball than they do in football. But I do think in football they're still in a really good place. I just think in basketball they're sneakily even better. I mean, you've got San Diego State and Gonzaga in there, for goodness sake. Those programs have played in national championship games within the last 5 years. So the next question with Memphis and their affiliation with the American is, would they ever jump to go anywhere? Of course they would. One day. But I don't think that day is very soon. The ACC and the Big 12 are not actively shopping for members at the moment. Brett Yormark doesn't tend to hide the ball when he wants to go out and add new schools. And the ACC was just trying to keep their new members. Now, keep an eye on Florida State and Clemson, because before the early 2030s, when you'll hear plenty of people, myself included, theorize about, college football going under a grand restructuring, getting to an AFC, NFC type model, and, really starting to resemble stylistically the NFL, just in terms, not in terms of, the game day experience. I pray every single night that never, ever, 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 ever changes. But just in terms of how the league is structured, who you play, your schedules, the automatic bids, and all that sort of stuff, I can see that happening. Nothing about that is guaranteed, though. If, however, the ACC suddenly needed members because Florida State and Clemson left and they were determined to stick together, Memphis would be near the top of the list. They're not that far away. The ACC's got SMU, Stanford, and Cal in the conference, for goodness sake. They'd be a primetime target. But I think the advantage for Memphis is you have simultaneously positioned yourself from a branding standpoint to be appealing to the ACC or Big 12 one day, should they want to go out and get new members. And history will tell you eventually they will. I don't think it's soon, but eventually I think they will. In the meantime, though, you don't need that. Talked about UNLV yesterday here on the show. And UNLV is probably trying to position themselves to be in a Power 4 or to get a Power 4 invite one day. There's no guarantee of that. Who would you let if the ACC were to need a school or they wanted to add a school? Who would they go get over Memphis? That's not in the Big 12. Don't go down that particular rabbit hole where you bring in West Virginia or somebody like that. Like, who would they go get? No, Memphis, South Florida, maybe. Okay. South Florida could be an option. I'd take Memphis personally. I think they've proven a lot more than South Florida, but I understand the appeal of both of those places. But the good news for Memphis, too, is the situation they're in the American is really good. You're in a really good conference. You're well off financially. Your programs have been winning in the sports that matter most over the last several years. You just got to keep it going. So I think Memphis would leave the American one day. I think for now, it's pretty, I feel pretty confident saying, nah, they're not going to, engage in the Pac-12 discussions or anything like that or make a surprise move. But hey, I'm sure you all agree with me, as you all do 100% of the time, so let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I think I know what's happening at Michigan, but I can't be sure. So why don't I talk to someone who does know what's going on in Ann Arbor? First, this episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That is where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. All-in-one convenience is what they are all about, because instead of juggling multiple apps and being all over the place, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, even plan long-term goals, all in one app. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Check them out at monarchmoney.com. That transfer portal just never stops. It just keeps rolling and rolling and rolling. You can exit the transfer portal at any time. Isaiah Hull of Locked On Wolverines knows that, because there's a new quarterback in the Michigan room here in the middle of June, which is just the way everybody drew it up, of course. So Jake Garcia, a bit of a journeyman, if ever there was one in college football, Isaiah, is going from East Carolina to Michigan. That's, I think, a mild upgrade in perhaps a few areas college-wise. No disrespect to the Pirates. Perfectly good school, but Big Ten American, one's a little bit of a jump up. What I'm curious about is why. Why does Michigan want to bring any quarterback into the room, especially one like Garcia, who's a veteran-ish? He's played a decent amount, but not a ton. The numbers haven't been super great. What exactly do you think is going on here?
What, you don't think it's a good idea to bring in a quarterback who lost his job to the same quarterback that you beat 49-0 2 years ago, and the rival Catton Hauser, who ended up transferring from MSU to East Carolina? You don't think it's a good idea?
Well, I'm just wondering what the thinking is. That's all.
It turns out that Bucknuts 420 and Sparty fan 69, they were right. It's because Bryce is super overweight. They don't have any kind of Michigan's given up on him already. That's their theory, and they're right. So it's not at all, because they just have no depth at all at quarterback, and they recognized that in spring ball when Mikey Keene was injured. Because when Mikey Keene was injured and wasn't able to, they brought him in thinking like, all right, maybe we can do a Kelly Bryant, Trevor Lawrence situation. We can try to, get Mikey Keene to start. We can bring in Bryce Underwood here in spells, get him ready, and then like game 5, game 6, he can start and be ready to go. Mikey Keene being injured all spring, I think, didn't help that, right? Like it was, they obviously also wanted him to compete with Bryce, so it isn't just like, keys are yours, man. You have nothing to worry about. Just go ahead and do whatever you're going to do. They wanted to make sure that he was on point. So, but I think that once you had the Keene injury, number one, and then the fact that Davis Warren, he tore his ACL in the bowl game, so he's not going to be ready until maybe like October, November. Number two. And then you lost Alex Orji and Jaden Denegal to the transfer portal, 3. So otherwise, like if Bryce Underwood got injured, considering Mikey Keene, we're already kind of considering him injured, right? Bryce Underwood gets injured, you're relying with either Jaden Davis, who didn't really look playable in the spring game, or Chase Herbstreit, fellow true freshman who arrives this summer, son of Kirk Herbstreit. Those are your options without Jake Garcia. So I think that they looked at it and said, yeah, we kind of got to do something, because our quarterback room has basically nobody, right? Like that was the spring game was Bryce Underwood versus Jaden Davis out of necessity, because those were the only 2 quarterbacks that were healthy on the entire roster. So you look at it and you say, yeah, we've got to figure out who we're going to bring in. Now, Garcia hasn't had a very good career thus far, obviously. He was a former 4-star, ranked in like around 100 when he went originally to Miami back in 2006. Before I think he took because he's from the West Coast originally. I think he took a covered wagon to Coral Gables. So He's been around for a minute, but
he is originally class of 2021 and enrolled at Miami. Was a top 10 quarterback in the class of 2021. The 24/7 composite had him as a top 50 player nationally. So it's not as if there isn't something there that just clearly hasn't been unlocked. The previous Miami staff wasn't horrible, wasn't great. I don't know the situation off the top of my head. I'm ashamed to say it as a national college football host. I don't have East Carolina football burned into my brain and everything that's gone on with the Pirates recently. It's not.
Don't forget about Missouri. He was at Missouri as well.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes. Of course. The quick pit stop there in Columbia. So a couple of things. I don't know what's crazier, that a quarterback left the portal and went to a legitimate Power 4 school in the middle of June, or that Kirk Herbstreit's son is actually a Michigan Wolverine. I'm balancing back and forth, one the other. I'm kind of leaning Herbstreit here, but
Herbstreit was at the spring game. I took a picture of him on the sideline, and it's the amount of vitriol. Like it's funny how I know this is Locked On College Football, not Locked On Wolverines, but the amount of vitriol that the Buckeyes had for the fact that his son is on the Michigan Wolverines, and the fact that he was at the spring game as an observer. Like it was, yeah. No, you guys are normal. You're absolutely normal. The fact that you buried this man the way you have.
Well, I can't wait for the next big storyline where Nick Saban's grandkid winds up a quarterback at Auburn, and Saban's there rocking War Eagle at the Auburn spring game one day. Last thing here on Garcia, where do you think he fits into the depth chart? Is he the clear-cut backup? Because I always describe, and I'm not the first to do so, backup quarterbacks are any type of insurance you have in your personal life. You never think about it. You never worry about it until it's the most important thing in your life. And you must have, and Michigan fans know that very well, that you need to have a solid backup quarterback situation or things can go awry a bit. What are the chances you think Garcia plays with regards to the Bryce Underwood leash, or God forbid an injury as well?
I think that in an ideal scenario, he's probably running third or fourth, to be honest. But I would guess at the outset of the season, assuming everyone's healthy, he's probably going to be running third. Also keep in mind that the only quarterback on the entire roster that has any kind of experience that is going to be thought to be ready in week one would be Mikey Keene, outside of Jake Garcia, because Jaden Davis has handed the ball off in one game. Bryce Underwood's never played a college game. And like I said, Davis Warren's not going to be available until mid to late season. So they just have no experience. So I think, though, it would probably go a pecking order if I was to write it up now. Assuming Mikey Keene's healthy, it would probably go Bryce Underwood, Mikey Keene, then Jake Garcia, then Jaden Davis, and then Chase Herbstreit. That would be how I think it would probably go at this juncture. But you could kind of interchange Garcia and Jaden Davis in my eyes between third and fourth. Now, if Keene isn't fully healthy and isn't ready to go, then yeah, he does probably vault up to being that number two guy. No offense to Jaden Davis, but like he just did not look playable in the spring game. It just did not look like for all the questions that we had kind of late season last year in the Michigan media about like, as bad as the quarterback situation has been, why have you not played Jaden Davis? Then we saw the spring game and you're like, that's why. So I think that Garcia is probably running ahead of him. He's got a bit more experience. At least they feel like Chip Lindsey can get something out of him if they need to. But maybe that's the case. I looked at the games he played in. It's not like even at like Miami didn't really play much. East Carolina, he had 6 games really, and it was kind of like, you really struggled against Eastern Tennessee Community State University College. You struggled against them. That's
not great, Bob.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the team, man. I guess.
Yeah, I think for Sharon Moore, he has to, at some level, look at this quarterback room and think, all right, guys, get ready to learn 26 power.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of it anyway, right? Like, it's just
that's true.
they'll just wrap Bryce Underwood in bubble wrap and then just be like, all right, we're going to keep you here in this bubble wrap for every third play. We'll take it off so that you can throw. And then otherwise, we're just going to keep you in bubble wrap because they want to run the football anyway. So I guess that probably bodes well. And then when he takes off running, you'll probably hear a lot of shrieking from the Michigan sideline with a just in case feeling.
Yeah, I can't wait for the Dave Portnoy reaction video to Bryce Underwood's first completed deep ball. That's going to be high quality entertainment. Isaiah Hole, Locked On Wolverines, great as always. Virginia Tech, what is going on, or rather not going on at Virginia Tech? We're talking about that next. Recruiting is allowed in Blacksburg, Virginia. That's home of the Virginia Tech Hokies, of course. Now, it may be breaking news to them that they have added a couple of players, solid prospects in the last couple of days, but Brian Smith, recruiting analyst of the Portal Podcast, is here to discuss, because you talk about underachieving on the trail, Brian, relative to the history. I don't know that a lot of younger college football fans, I'm barely old enough to remember Virginia Tech when it was Virginia Tech, when it was when they were churning out double-digit win seasons. Since 2011, or since 2012, I should say, they had a double-digit win season, 2011. They've had 10 or more wins just one time. And I actually predicted, perhaps infamously, on this show, Brent Pry to go 10-2 last year because he was turning Virginia Tech around. They had a returning quarterback. They had a lot of returning production. They went 6-7. They lost to Vanderbilt in the second week, and I knew that prediction was going off the rails and such. But on the recruiting front, Brian, for a coach going into his fourth year, I feel like Virginia Tech should be ranked higher than 91st in the country right now. I'm sure they'll get higher, but 91st, this is underperforming in the recruiting ranks, right?
Underperforming? How about not showing up to the dance? Like, bro, 4 commitments. And see, today, as we record this, we're getting to that point where we're past the halfway mark of June.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't understand. Like, Virginia Tech's a school that's kind of out away from the city and all that, but like Bruce Smith decided to go there, and all these other great players that have went on to the NFL. Like, why is it suddenly difficult to get kids to even really consider? Like, there's just not any buzz about them at all in the recruiting train. There's just not. And I don't understand why. Like, Joshua Pittman's a pretty good player, the linebacker they just got, but like, why is it 4 guys? Like, it's just, you're right down the road from all the players in the 757, the Roanoke area, Hampton and all that. DC's right up the road from that. And you're not that far from Charlotte. It is a fertile area to recruit. It doesn't make any sense at all. This is a problem internally because Virginia Tech has been proven that they can be a top 15 program on a consistent basis. It's fact. So unless something changes, there might be some coaching changes.
Now, under Brent Pry, they have been an average recruiting school. I don't think they've been horrific. I also don't think they have been great. We'll see where this class winds up being. There is still time. But to your point, I think eventually you go past a certain date and you can't lean into an argument of, well, it's still early in the cycle. It's like, well, I don't know. We're in the middle of June. Most of your class take shape in June and July. That's when most of the commits really roll through. You'll get some in August that can happen as well. But you're a quarter of the way through the hottest part of the recruiting cycle, and you're sitting there, and sure, you've added a couple players, and you've increased, but by bringing in 2 guys, you've increased the number of players in your recruiting class by 100%. That's not, they've been a top 30, 40-ish recruiter since Brent Pry got there. But one of the reasons that I bring this up on today's show, Brian, is Brent Pry's going into year 4. Not 2, not 3, year 4 off a disappointing third year where I was not the only person saying, hey, watch out for Virginia Tech as a dark horse in the ACC championship race. They didn't sniff it. Kyron Drones and the offense never got going consistently, and it just did not work out the way that it should have. They made a bowl game, whoop-de-doo. But when you couple recruiting mediocrity or struggles on top of results that are not where they're supposed to be, I think this is one of the more underrated, pressured coaching jobs in college football this year.
I don't know what his buyout is, but I guarantee you the athletic director does. That's how this works, Spencer.
Yeah.
That's fair or not, that's the way this works. Now, the next question is, who are you going to hire? That's always the most important question. So
this is true.
It's just, and it's supposed to be, allegedly, from what I've been told, it's going to be a rather large year for coaches getting the pink slip. So competition for elite coaches will be high, and there aren't a lot of big names. So he may have a little bit of more wiggle room, as they say. But if you don't recruit well and you go, let's say, 6-6 again this year, that conversation is going to be had by the BOT, the AD, president, et cetera. Not saying it'll happen, but your moneymaker, your revenue has to come through basketball and football. We all know it, especially with this, what is it, $20.5 million? The house settlement starts in a couple of weeks. That is money you have to come up with. Losing in football is not how that works at all. I know they love Enter Sandman, but they love it better when there's a win at the end of the game. So if they don't figure this out quick, he won't be there. This year or next, it would be one or the other.
Yeah, by the way, did you know that Virginia Tech, I don't know if they're the only school. I know they're one of the only schools in the Power Four who start the season with back-to-back SEC opponents. They play South Carolina first and Vanderbilt week 2. And, Vanderbilt is, of course, miles ahead of the Big Ten, in the words of their quarterback, Diego Pavia, who was just taken. You didn't see this, Brian? Oh, he was dunking on the Big Ten. Saying, why would you go? Let me pull up the exact quote here from our good friend. It is peak. It is indeed peak June content. This is going to take me a moment.
That's right. Diego Pavia, I saw him play live last year.
He's awesome.
He is clutch. I mean, he's third down nightmare. Control the ball, not put it where it's got to get in harm's way, but put it right where it needs to go to score. Like he's clutch, man.
Yeah, he is. And that's what I remember most about their upset of Alabama last year. And is that Pavia was just executing on third down over and over and over again. Yeah. He'll be Vanderbilt's quarterback again this year. But here's what he said, quote, "You want to play with the best. You don't want to play with the Big Ten. You ignore those calls. The SEC, it's like week after week, you're going to get beat on. The Big Ten, you're not going to get beat on with Purdue, Nebraskas." And ouch. Them some fighting words. And I tell you what, if Vanderbilt doesn't beat Virginia Tech in week 2 out of the ACC,
we're going to have to revisit this.
Yeah. I think more than a few people are going to revisit that particular quote. But, Virginia Tech's schedule, I think it's pretty tough on the back half. When you get into conference play, it starts off pretty easy with NC State, Wake Forest. But then it is legitimately hard. Their win total on FanDuel is 6.5. And the recruiting angle that I look at it with this, Brian, is you're never going to be fired as a head coach solely because you don't recruit. You can, however, allow that to be the icing on the cake that the athletic director makes. The results on the field aren't there, and we don't see an uptick in recruiting. You think about a guy like Billy Napier. What's one of the reasons Billy Napier has his job? The dude recruits really, really well. He recruits incredibly well. If he hadn't, maybe they would have ponied up the buyout money at this point in time. So I think the pressure level for Brent Pry to win at least 8 games this year is squarely on his shoulders, because unless something changes in the next 6 weeks, really, maybe, and it could, but history would tell you they're not going to get inside the top 30 or top 25 and, really make some noise on the trail. If they don't do that, there's going to be no recruiting class to save Brent Pry perceptually for Hokie fans.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. What are you selling if it's questionable? Drones didn't make a developmental step last year. He was expected to. You underachieved win-loss, and we're looking at 4 commitments on the board for the class of 26. That's over. Quarterback's the first thing people ask about when a program's developing or not. So I brought that up first. But if quarterback play doesn't get better, that record's not going to get better either. So, by the way, that is a random point about the 2 SEC. Like South Carolina's got their front. I hope Virginia Tech, and they lost their tackle to Auburn, by the way, speaking of the SEC. He went over this could be a very auspicious start for the Hokies. If they start 0-2.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I mean, last year I thought they'd beat Vanderbilt, and lo and behold, they did not. They went to Tennessee and lost that football game. They've got it at home, but boy, you better win at least one of them, or else.
If they go 0-2 there, it would be a very steep climb.
And then you know who they play week 3? The ever upset-minded Old Dominion Monarchs.
If they start 0-3, you can
0-3. Bye. That will be bye time. Brian Smith, the Portal Podcast, longtime recruiting analyst. That will do it for the show today. Appreciate everybody listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.